Tonight, we begin with a naval confrontation that military analysts had warned could come. A confrontation that defense officials described with three words: unprovoked, sustained, and escalatory. I am Jhon, and I've spent the last few hours analyzing multiple incoming reports, open-source intelligence, and defense signals. And what's emerging is not what mainstream coverage is focusing on. I've analyzed multiple international reports, open-source intelligence, and defense signals. A clash that didn't unfold over weeks of diplomatic back and forth, but in a matter of hours. Hours that shattered the fragile ceasefire that had been holding barely for 1 month. Hours that put 3 U.S. Navy destroyers under simultaneous, coordinated fire in one of the most strategically vital waterways on Earth. Hours that forced the United States military to respond with strikes on Iranian soil. What Iran did on May 7, 2026, crossed a line that Washington had hoped the ceasefire would hold. And when that line broke, CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command, did not hesitate. They responded with precision, speed, and overwhelming defensive clarity. For weeks now, there had been signals, not official confirmations, not formal announcements, just patterns, movements, and intelligence indicators suggesting that something was building beneath the surface of this ceasefire. According to defense reporting from CBS News, cross-referenced with CENTCOM statements and open-source intelligence tracking, Iran had been escalating its posture around the Strait of Hormuz in a series of incremental, measured steps. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has always been aggressive in its rhetoric, but also extremely calculated in how it chooses moments to act. Their behavior in the strait followed a recognizable pattern: probe, test, withdraw, probe again. But this time, something changed. The incremental probing went from harassment to full assault, and analysts who monitor naval traffic patterns and IRGC communications know exactly what a shift like that signals. The movement of fast attack boat squadrons into formation positions, the activation of shore-based missile and drone launch infrastructure, the coordination of multiple threat vectors, missiles, UAVs, and small boats in a layered, simultaneous strike architecture. And then, the decision to pull the trigger, not in isolation, but against 3 warships at once. When Iran stops testing and starts striking, that's when something irreversible is about to happen. Early on May 7, 2026, reports from U.S. Central Command confirmed what they described as a multi-vector, sustained attack on U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers transiting the international sea passage of the Strait of Hormuz. According to CENTCOM's official press release, cross-confirmed by CBS News, CNN, Stars and Stripes, and The War Zone, Iranian forces launched multiple missiles, drones, and small fast attack boats simultaneously against not 1, not 2, but 3 American warships, including attack configurations that had not been observed in this combination since the earliest, most intense days of the conflict. These are the types of coordinated multi-domain assaults that are only executed when signaling one of 3 things: a deliberate test of American defensive resolve, a calculated escalation designed to shift negotiating leverage, or a break in command discipline that opens the door to something far more dangerous. Different sources are interpreting this differently. According to Iranian state media and Tasnim news agency, Tehran framed this as retaliation, claiming the U.S. first violated the ceasefire by targeting an Iranian oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman. Meanwhile, CENTCOM says the attacks were entirely unprovoked, describing them as part of a pattern of Iranian aggression that has seen Iran attack U.S. forces more than 10 times since the ceasefire began. But one thing is unambiguously clear across all sources: Iran has shifted from probing to striking. And that shift changes everything. The response from U.S. Central Command was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was immediate. Within hours of the attack on the 3 destroyers, CENTCOM initiated self-defense strikes against Iranian military facilities on Iranian soil, targeting the very infrastructure that made the attack possible. These were not standard naval countermeasures. These were high-level, strategic precision strikes, the kind that target command and control nodes, launch infrastructure, and intelligence architecture, systems only neutralized when preparing to shut down an opponent's ability to escalate further. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, had already warned this week at a formal press briefing that while the U.S. was operating in a defensive posture, it remained prepared to respond. That preparation was no longer theoretical after May 7th. Tonight, multiple confirmed reports from CENTCOM, CBS News, CNN, and Stars and Stripes tell us that U.S. forces carried out precision self-defense strikes targeting Iranian missile and drone launch sites responsible for the attack on the 3 destroyers, command and control locations, the coordination centers directing the multi-vector assault, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance nodes, the eyes that guided the attack, including the Bandar Kargan naval checkpoint in Minab, confirmed by Fox News Pentagon correspondent Jennifer Griffin from a senior U.S. official, which had recently been active in coordinating naval interdiction operations against U.S. vessels. Additionally, U.S. strikes hit targets in Bandar Abbas and Qeshm Island, 2 of Iran's most strategically significant southern port facilities sitting directly on the Strait of Hormuz. This was not random. This was the surgical removal of operational infrastructure. American forces didn't overreach. They didn't strike Tehran, they didn't target civilian population centers, a charge Iran made which CENTCOM has not confirmed. They hit exactly what allowed Iran to launch the attack, and nothing more. And this is where the situation becomes far more serious than the headlines suggest. Analysts now believe that Iran's decision to simultaneously target 3 destroyers, the USS Truxtun, DDG-103, the USS Rafael Peralta, DDG-115, and the USS Mason, DDG-87, was precisely calibrated to test the speed and decisiveness of U.S. defensive response. To see how long it takes American forces to react, to measure the layers of their defense, to determine whether, under the political pressure of an active ceasefire and ongoing nuclear negotiations, the United States would choose restraint over response. But they didn't hesitate. Over several hours, according to CBS News reporting from U.S. officials, the 3 destroyers mounted a layered defense using 5-inch naval guns, close-in weapon systems, CIWS, small-caliber deck guns, Apache helicopter-fired Hellfire missiles, and 50-caliber machine guns, while additional aircraft provided overhead support. Iranian missiles were shot down. Drones were incinerated in the air. Fast attack boats were engaged and destroyed. And then American aircraft struck back at the source. This wasn't just a reaction. It was a demonstration. A message delivered not in words, but in precision-guided munitions. The message? Threaten U.S. warships in international waters, and you will lose the capability you used to do it. As more information has come in across the last 72 hours, the scale of what happened becomes clearer and more alarming. Iran executed a multi-vector naval assault, missiles, suicide drones, and fast-attack boat swarms simultaneously against 3 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers in one of the world's most monitored waterways. U.S. forces targeted multiple Iranian military sites across at least 3 locations: Bandar Abbas, Qeshm Island, and the Bandar Kargan naval checkpoint in Minab, making this one of the most geographically broad U.S. retaliatory actions since Operation Epic Fury. Iranian state media reported that commercial areas at the Bahman Pier on Qeshm Island were struck. Iran's armed forces spokesperson claimed U.S. airstrikes also hit civilian areas in Bandar Kamir and Sirik, a claim that has not been confirmed by CENTCOM. This wasn't a minor skirmish. This was coordinated, multi-domain naval warfare, executed during a declared ceasefire. This was structured escalation, not impulsive aggression. This situation goes far beyond the tactical naval engagement. It directly impacts the arteries of the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is the single most important maritime choke point on the planet. Approximately 20% of the world's traded oil passes through it. Every hour it is contested, energy markets feel it. According to economic observers monitoring the situation, events like these directly influence global oil prices, shipping insurance rates, and the decisions of tanker operators worldwide. The U.S. Navy's Project Freedom maritime escort operation, designed to safely convoy commercial vessels through the strait, is now under direct threat. And beyond the economic dimension, there is a broader regional dimension. Iran also launched attacks on the United Arab Emirates on May 5th and has been sustaining pressure on Gulf states that support the U.S. position. Schools in the UAE shifted to remote learning due to ongoing Iranian strikes. Qatar, Fujairah, the entire Persian Gulf region is now operating under active threat conditions. This is not isolated. This is a regional conflict actively testing the limits of a paper ceasefire. At this stage, it is important to note, different sources are reporting different layers of this story, and responsible analysis means acknowledging those differences rather than collapsing them into a single narrative. CENTCOM's official statements emphasize the unprovoked nature of the Iranian attacks and confirm no U.S. assets were struck, a position cross-confirmed by Stars and Stripes, CBS News, and CNN. Iranian state media, Tasnim, Fars, and the Islamic Republic News Agency frames the May 7th events as Iranian retaliation for the U.S. disabling of the oil tanker MT Hasna on May 6th, claiming the U.S. violated the ceasefire first. Open-source intelligence accounts, including OSINT Technical on X, geolocated explosions near Bahman Pier on Qeshm Island, providing independent corroboration that strikes did occur in the reported locations. The analysis you are watching right now is built on the convergence of all three layers: official, adversarial, and independent, because in situations like this, truth lives in the intersection. Analysts are now considering multiple scenarios as this situation develops. One possibility is that Iran is preparing a larger, more organized response, using each tactical engagement to map U.S. defensive patterns and identify vulnerabilities before committing to a significantly escalated action. Another is that the May 7th attack was a deliberate signal designed to strengthen Iran's hand in the ongoing nuclear negotiations, demonstrating to Washington that Tehran is willing to absorb strikes and keep fighting, and that the ceasefire has a price. And the most concerning scenario is that the ceasefire is now functionally dead, that both sides are operating in a gray zone where declared peace and active combat exist simultaneously, and that one miscalculation, one sunken ship, one lost pilot could collapse the diplomatic track entirely and restart full-scale hostilities. At this point, none of these scenarios is confirmed, but all three are grounded in the indicators we can verify. From my analysis, there are now two clear paths forward for Iran. Either Iran escalates further, risking a U.S. military response that goes far beyond targeted self-defense strikes and directly threatens the Islamic Republic's military infrastructure at a strategic level. Or Iran steps back, accepts the current exchange as a tactical loss, returns to the negotiating table under the American nuclear proposal currently under review in Tehran, and attempts to salvage the ceasefire framework. Both options carry severe consequences. Escalation risks drawing the full weight of U.S. military capability back into active engagement, a capability that, during Operation Epic Fury, degraded Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure in ways that took decades to build. De-escalation risks appearing weak to the IRGC hardliners inside Iran who pushed for the May 7th attack, creating internal political fractures that could be just as destabilizing as external military pressure. Neither path is simple, and neither path leads somewhere comfortable. This is Jhon, reporting for Revolt Files. All analysis in this report is based on publicly available data official statements from U.S. Central Command, reporting from CBS News, CNN, Al Jazeera, Stars and Stripes, The War Zone, and open-source intelligence. The situation around the Strait of Hormuz is evolving rapidly, and critical developments may have occurred after the time of this recording. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we track these developments in real time, and the next development in this story may come at any hour. And I want to hear your analysis. What do you think Iran does next? Does the ceasefire survive? Or are we watching the first steps toward a renewed conflict? Drop your assessment in the comments, because in situations like this, every perspective matters.